Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravigarajacharya Shata Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Krishna Prasad Putale Srimante Bhakti Vikas Swami Namane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Alrighty. So there's a lot of like appearance days and things like that today, special events. So I'll read through some of those and speak on that, and then we'll go to the Bhagavad Gita. And so I mean, is this the text I'm supposed to be speaking on? I thought it was 46. I think Chandan gave him 45 last. But anyways, I'll chant some prayers and then I'll speak on some of these things. So, Om Agana Timanandasya Gananjanjana Slakaya Chakshur Tamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganavtam Idam Tam Shajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Adaitam Shri Vishakam Itam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimante Bhakti Vikas Swaminiti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimante Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunivari Pashketare Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so today on the Vaishnav calendar is there's a couple of like events mentioned. So the festivals today are Vashanta Panchami, the appearance day of Srimati Vishnupriya Devi, Saraswati Puja, the disappearance day of Vishwanath Saraswati Thakur, appearance day of Sri Pundarik Vijayanidhi, appearance day of Sri Raghudandan Thakur, and then the appearance of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. And so I'll just mention a couple things about all these different events. So it's a lot more than usual. So usually there's just like one or two, but today it's I think like some 5 or 6 or something. So let's see here. So Vashata Panchami. So what it mentions here is so it's the first day of spring, and then it's on the 5th day of the waxing moon. So that's and so in temples like in Vrindavan and in Mayapur, they offer like flowers and like leaves and stuff like that as like a signification of like the first day of spring. And then in Mayapur, they it's meant there's like an article about it, but they dress, and then I think in Vrindavan too and other major temples, but they dress Krishna in yellow, and then some of the local people, like the women, they'll wear like yellow saris or dresses, and so it's like that. So that's how that festival is celebrated. So the beginning of spring, and and anyways, to just a small comment on that, and regular society, it's like an important aspect because winter's ending, spring's beginning, so that means like planting the crops and like that, moving and into like the production for the next whatever the next season. And so it's a significant event and importance. Nowadays it doesn't matter, growing season or not growing season, because it doesn't, there's always bananas at Walmart, there's always avocados, the vegetables are they're all there. There's no conception of growing seasons to us. But in, the real scheme of things, there, certain fruits grow at certain times in certain places and things like that. Just like the other day, I was listening to some devotees, and they were talking about, when they were preaching in Russia back when, it was known as the USSR. And so they had, so for a Vaishnav initiation or sacrifice, one of the elements, or not one of the elements, but one of the items required is a banana. So the devotee, he brought the bananas, and you're supposed to throw the banana in the fire as a part of the ritual enjoined by Shastra. So none of the individuals in Russia wanted to throw the banana in the fire because they hadn't seen banana in like 10 years. And so it's like, so sometimes we can like, take these things for granted in society. But anyway, just a little significance about that. And so just continuing, there's so much that can be said about all these personalities. I'll just mention briefly. So Vishnupriya Devi, she's the wife of Lord Chaitanya, of Nimai Pandit, before he took sannyas, obviously. And so she was his second wife because his first wife died when he was traveling. And she's the eternal consort of the Lord, so she's not just some regular girl or something like that. She's an expansion of his internal potency. So she's an eternal associate of the Lord, and she came down to serve in that capacity. And so when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, she engaged in severe austerities and chanted Hare Krishna and was eating very little and worshiping a deity of Lord Chaitanya like that. And then let's see the next one. So Saraswati Puja, we don't celebrate that as Vaishnavas, but the understanding is that Saraswati is worshipped by worshiping Vishnu, and we give significance to Divya Saraswati, who's the goddess of fortune also, not to the mundane Saraswati of this world for material knowledge and music and things like that. So Vishwanath Chaudhary Thakur is a esteemed Vaishnavacharya in our line. So there's in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, there's a list mention of different like spiritual masters or teachers. And they all contributed something greatly to the sampradaya. And so Vishwanath Chaudhary Thakur, aside from being a great devotee, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentioned that he was the protector and guardian and acharya during the middle period of the historical development of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And then this article is mentioned 1600s to 1700s. And so, let's see here. So Prabhupada studied, Prabhupada quotes him a lot in the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, and also in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And particularly, Srila Prabhupada mentions, he read some commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur about taking the orders of the spiritual master as one's life and soul, and he signifies that as like a major inspiration for him in spreading Krishna consciousness in the West, and taking more, and like coming to, at least for as setting the pastime of coming to take more seriously Lord Chaitanya's, Lord Chaitanya, but his own spiritual master's instructions. So continuing, so Pundarik Vijayanidhi is a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, and there's a pastime with him. In short, one devotee thought that that this guy was just he was just like he was just interested in sense gratification, because materially speaking, like he had like long hair, and like he was like getting a like oil massage or something. He just didn't look like a spiritual person. And so one devotee was having doubts about it, and then the other devotee, I guess, kind of sensing that, quoted a verse, and so then Pundarik Vijayanidhi, revealing his high position in Krishna consciousness, whatever, like threw away all these, things that he had and started ripping up like all of his expensive things, and then that devotee realized that actually he's a great Vaishnav. Sometimes we can't judge a book by its cover, but the thing is that we understand a Vaishnav mainly by like what they speak and how they behave. If they're speaking according to the verdict of Shastra, then we understand that this is a great devotee, and if he's acting accordingly also. So, but sometimes we may not, if like, a great devotee comes and he was just out on book distribution, he has regular clothes, we may think there's just somebody, regular person on the street. But they may, but by their activities and by their behavior, we understand that, they're, working so hard to distribute books and things like that. So, anyway, there's so many different things that can be said about this. So Raghunandan Thakur, what's mentioned about him on this website is pretty much that, he was there's some pastime mentioned with him that he was begging Krishna to take, honor some prasadam. Like his father told him to make an offering. And so he made the offering, and then he was begging Krishna to eat it. So because he was so devotional that Krishna actually ate the offering. And so, when we offer things, it's, Krishna takes it, but then everything remains. So this great devotee, he made this offering, and Krishna actually came and took it personally. And so he's remembered in that way. And then we have Raghunath Das Goswami. So, there could be seminars given about Raghunath Das Goswami. He's one of the 6 Goswamis, which we have the picture on the altar here. So I don't know exactly which one he is, but so he there's a lot mentioned about him. He as far as activities, so he was constantly trying to flee his household life. His family was rich, and he had a beautiful life, but he was always trying to get the association of Lord Chaitanya as associates. So anyways, one day he managed to escape, and he was able to join the associates of Lord Chaitanya, and then he's known for engaging in not severe austerity, but he was pretty austere. He would barely eat, he would barely sleep, and he lived a life in that way, showing some of the highest platforms of renunciation. And there's much mention of him in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, actually, for whenever you get there to read that in Anchalila. So anyways, there's a couple things about those days. So now I'll jump into the Bhagavad Gita. So I'll go through the word for word. There we go. Alrighty. So, all right. So, there we go. So, tapashvibhyaha adhikaha yogi jnanibhyaha api mataha adikaha karmibhyaha cha adikaha yogi tasmat yogi bhava Arjuna. Okay. Tapashvibhyo diko yogi Jnanibhyo pi matodikaha karmibhyaschadiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna tapashvibhyo diko yogi Jnanibhyo pi matodikaha karmibhyaschadiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna tapashvibhyo diko yogi Jnanibhyo pi matodikaha karmibhyaschadiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. Okay. Tapashvibhyo yogi. Okay, so word for word. So tapashvibhyaha, then the ascetics. Adikaha, greater. Yogi, the yogi. Ganebhyaha, then the wise. Api, also. Mataha, considered. Adikaha, greater. Karmibhyaha, then the fruit of workers. Cha, also. Adikaha, greater. Yogi, the yogi. Tasmat, therefore. Yogi, a transcendentalist. Bhava, just become. Arjuna, O Arjuna. Okay, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. When we speak of yoga, we refer to linking our consciousness with the Supreme Absolute Truth. Such a process is named differently by various practitioners in terms of the particular method adopted. When the linking process is predominantly in fruitive activities, it is called karma yoga. When it is predominantly empirical, it is called jnana yoga. And when it is predominantly in a devotional relationship with the Supreme Lord, it is called bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga, or Krishna consciousness, is the ultimate perfection of all yogas, as will be explained in the next verse. The Lord has confirmed herein the superiority of yoga, but He has not mentioned that it is better than bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is full spiritual knowledge, and therefore nothing can excel it. Asceticism without self-knowledge is imperfect, empiric knowledge without surrender to the Supreme Lord is also imperfect. And fruitive work without Krishna consciousness is a waste of time. Therefore, the most highly praised form of yoga performance mentioned here is Bhakti Yoga. And this is still more clearly explained in the next verse. So, tapashvibhyo diko yogi, jnanibhyo pi matodikaha, karmibhyaschadiko yogi, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. A yogi is greater than an ascetic, greater than an empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. So, at first glance, when we read this verse, we may think that Krishna is just telling Arjuna just to be a yogi. So we understand in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna, he didn't want to fight. He wanted to be a yogi. He wanted to renounce everything. If we look at the first verse of this chapter, you don't have to pull it up, but I'll just read it real quick. Well, there's so many different verses actually, but so Arjuna tells Krishna in the beginning of this chapter that one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is a true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. And then he goes on to explain, is what is called renunciation you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme, O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces desire for sense gratification. So a couple things. So in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna wanted to renounce and be a yogi and not fight and go to the woods and practice, austerities. So Krishna in the beginning of this chapter, in so many other chapters he made the point, but he's establishing what renunciation actually is. It's working as one's obliged to. And he makes the point here, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. So one who is actually unattached. Let's see here. So he's not attached to his actual work. He's sannyas, renounced. He performs a duty. So anyways, so that's so just to kind of give more context to this verse in Arjuna's situation. Because then Arjuna could still be thinking, well, best thing, be a yogi and renounce everything. But there's no question of renunciation at this point. Krishna's not telling Arjuna to renounce working, to give up, to give up his duty as a warrior. Which, if generally speaking, it's difficult for people just to give up everything, and just whatever you're doing, just completely stop it and do this other thing. Unless it's a superior engagement. So the whole point of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is convincing Arjuna to do to understand, to take it to the next step, that well, first of all, Arjuna doesn't want to do what he's supposed to do. So Krishna is convincing him that you do your activity because this is what I want you to do. And he makes it very clear that Krishna wants Arjuna to fight. Because we also see, if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's not that, one has to understand very clearly what Krishna wants through the medium of the spiritual master and the devotees. Because if we look at Srimad Bhagavatam in the fourth canto, there's another history there mentioned of another great devotee who was a warrior, who was fighting very much, and another devotee, Manu, came down and told that individual to stop fighting. And he spoke a lot of the same things of the Bhagavad Gita to him. So it seems like, contradictory. But it's not contradictory, because the point is that the Manu was trying to explain to this devotee, Dhruva Maharaj, that, you're fighting and doing all these things, but this isn't pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What all this different killing and things like that. You should appease your anger. You should control your anger. So and he was speaking, that the soul is eternal, and then this thing that happened to you was due to karma, like that. So in this particular verse, so Krishna is explaining to Arjuna the transcendental ladder, so say. So you have so yogi is the top, ascetic, empiricist, and then fruitive worker. So a fruitive worker is just someone that's interested in doing their work or getting some result. that they, whatever you work, 10 hours and then you get, whatever, $200 to $300. That's more or less like the mentality of a frugal worker. And then he's saying higher than that is an empiricist, so one who's trying to understand, the nature of this world and a little bit more intelligence. Okay, we have elements, and then there's the cosmos and things, and then what's my place in it and all that kind of stuff. And then an ascetic is someone who's, they're undertaking, difficulties to try to realize, higher levels of consciousness or spiritual understanding. And so we see that generally in maybe most cultures that was found, people, if they wanted to get like some spiritual realization or something, some people like in the Middle East, they'll go to the desert and kind of like that, or some people in India, they'll go to the mountains. Some traditions, different people fast and they don't eat anything, or they only eat certain things, or they only eat at a certain time of day. They try to abnegate this tendency for sense pleasure, to reduce it, to refrain from it. And then the yogi is one, as we understand from the Bhagavad Gita, is one who is trying to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart and reducing all interaction with the material world. And so it's important that, Prabhupada explains in the very first sentence, that when we speak of yoga, we refer to linking our consciousness with the Supreme Absolute Truth. So a yogi, which we understand from the Bhagavad Gita in previous verses, of controlling the senses, controlling the mind, being patient. And we saw it, or we read in the, probably months ago, about, that the yogi, he sits in a certain way and he controls his breathing, all these different things. We discuss these. And so this is giving us the understanding of the full picture of what an actual yogi is. Because nowadays, if someone says they're a yogi, it's like, they practice yoga in New York City, and then they go, to the yoga, whatever club, and they do a couple stretches, and everybody's hanging out, and everybody's got tight clothes on. So this, the first principle of yoga is actually that one's celibate. But if we actually look and we ask like some different yogis, they may not be celibate, they may not be controlling their senses. So they're doing the physical activities of yoga, but they're not actually doing they're just stretching their body. It's not yoga. Yoga isn't to stretch the body. Yoga is to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's also mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This Dhyanavitsita tatgatena manasa pashyantiyam yoginaha. That the object of yoga is to meditate upon Vishnu. So this is the proper understanding. And this is also, too, this is explained in so many of these different yoga sutras and things like that. Actual people who follow that path, they understand these things. But, in order to, make things, commercially more viable, these things get taken out. And so the actual process of yoga is lost. And so it's important also when we read the Bhagavad Gita and we study the Shastra and we hear it, that we analyze, whatever ideas that we have and conceptions we have, and always keep the reference point into what Krishna is actually saying in the Bhagavad Gita, and trying to understand what he's saying and what Srila Prabhupada is saying, and understand things in the true light. Because if we have, just like I was speaking before, if we have a misconception about what a yogi is, and then we read this text, or we have just a misconception about this text, and we think that, well, Krishna's saying be a yogi, so I'll be a yogi, so I'll go buy a membership to, this Bikram Yoga society, and I'll go get my yoga teacher license, and I'm doing what Krishna says. So we have to understand, what Krishna means when he's speaking in the Bhagavad Gita, and we got full illumination of that in this purport here of Srila Prabhupada explaining what yoga actually is. And we also have to be aware and throw out whatever misconceptions we may have, and also be willing to reconcile the information that we have to be willing to let go of misconceptions or ideas that we have that we may think are correct. And it takes humility actually to do that. And that's why Krishna, he'll explain in the next chapter, in so many places, but he makes the point, just touch Trinu, just hear from me full, free from doubt, asamshayaha, And if there is any doubt, then cut those out. And there's so many times. And then the end of the 4th chapter is Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Shrotavyas Kirtavasyastas Tmartas Tepyasya Chabeyam. That he explains to Arjuna that, whatever doubts or misconceptions you have, they should be slashed out with the sword of knowledge. So knowledge comes from the saintly persons, from the scripture. And they're all trying to convince us to let go of whatever misconceptions that we have and come to the platform of actual knowledge and understanding who Krishna is, who his devotees are, what is our relationship to him, and then the perfection of life, which is to serve them full-heartedly. And so this is only possible by submissive hearing, which is also mentioned in the Bhagavatam. I'm forgetting the verse exactly. You know what I would do? Stani Sita Shruti Katam Tanuvan Manobir. So the Lord Brahma is explaining that, just stay in your place and just hear. Because by hearing, one can have a change of heart. And when we have a change of heart and we hear properly from the Shastra, then we begin to change our action. We begin to change our behavior. Just like we were reading in the 2nd verse, it's mentioning that Krishna was mentioning that the actual yoga is to give up the desire for sense gratification. So to just engage in the physical activities of yoga or, to make the appearance of being a spiritual person isn't enough. One has to give up, or at least gauge in the purificatory process by which someone gives up the propensity for sense gratification. And this is the point, the change of consciousness. And we see that with Arjuna also, that he, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, that he followed this process which Krishna is explaining, bhakti yoga, and he gave up the desire for sense gratification. Because in the beginning he didn't want to fight, because he was thinking, if I fight, then it won't be good for my sense gratification. And and like that. So I don't want to fight because it's better for my sense gratification, in short. And so Krishna convinced him that, that may be good for your sense gratification, but, what's going to be better is that if you serve my senses. Another name for Krishna is Hrishikesh. Hrishi means senses, and then Kesha means Isha. So it means Lord. So Krishna is the Lord of the senses. So if we serve Krishna, who's the proprietor of all the senses, then our senses are automatically satisfied. But, and that may not manifest. We may do. It may be difficult to do something in Shastra, just like it's like we should rise early and things like that, and refrain from certain things. So that may be difficult. But if we do those things, it will help us advance in Krishna consciousness, and ultimately, in the long run, we'll feel satisfied in that way if we adopt those activities that are mentioned. So, in the purport, a couple things are mentioned. So, Prabhupada gives light on some of these different things about bhakti yoga. Oh, so one thing in the purport, which is not explicitly mentioned in the text itself. So Krishna ends this text by saying in all circumstances be a yogi. So you can take that text and then say, well, just be a yogi. That's what this text is explaining. That the highest thing is just be a yogi. So I'm just going to be a yogi. But then if we read the next text, Krishna says who the highest yogi actually is, which will be discussed next week. I won't get into it. But Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that the highest yogi is the devotee, the bhakti yogi. That's the highest form of yoga. Because by engaging in devotional service, that's the easiest and the quickest way to link our consciousness with the Supreme Absolute Truth. And if something's the easiest and the quickest, then it's generally the best. And all these other things too. I mean, I don't know if Prabhupada says here exactly, but what does he say here? Okay, so he says such a process is named differently by various practitioners in terms of the particular method adopted. So what that sentence means is that there are these different paths for realizing Krishna, and so these paths they're different ways of doing it, but some are slower than others. And so, I mean, it's like if you have to go from here to New York, I mean, you can walk, you can take a bike, You can, take some buses. You could, whatever, take a train. You could take a boat. You can walk from here to California, and then, whatever. Then, take a boat from California and go all the way around the world. Or you just take a plane and, get there like an hour or two. So that's the understanding with Krishna consciousness, that it's quicker. Prabhupada would say it's like an escalator, that if you're on the first floor and you're trying to get to the 100th floor, it's like an elevator. You just get on the elevator and you're there quick. So these other paths can take one there, but they're extremely slow. And they're not for sure. There's different pitfalls on those paths. So the for sure and the easiest way is just Krishna consciousness. Because we see with Krishna consciousness, like if we had to go and practice like yoga, something that one of the yogis do is that when it's freezing cold, when it gets below zero and the lake is covered with a nice sheet of ice, they'll break that open and then they'll go down there and they'll get in that water and meditate. So which of us can do that actually? We usually avoid cold water. Or when it's really, really hot, they make it a point to go and light so many fires around themselves so that they can meditate better. It's crazy. I mean, we don't do those things. I mean, when it's hot, we turn the AC on and put it on full blast. When it's cold, we put the heater on and get a jacket. When it's raining, we get an umbrella. If there's so much wind, we stay indoors. We able these different things, these inconveniences, because they disturb our mind. Just like if we had to skip, food for a day or two, we would be really disturbed, and we would have trouble functioning. And we might get weak. We might start getting headaches. Our body might start aching. We wouldn't be able to function. But there's yogis that's they love it. They're totally into that. They love not eating anything. Just a spoonful of rice and sitting around fire in the middle of summer and just meditating in that way. And so. But the thing is that even those great yogis, just like we understand that there was a great yogi named Vishwamrita. And so he was engaging in yoga like this. And so he had a little bit of trouble. So he was doing all these austerities and things like that, but he wasn't completely purified. And so when the opportunity came for sense gratification in the form of a woman, he immediately was attracted to that. And so the position of yoga actually is not for sure, because then in the heart, still the desire for sense gratification remains. But in Krishna consciousness, the senses are completely satisfied. So we don't say, don't eat and don't sleep and, don't, look at beautiful things and, like that, or, what's it called? And as Prabhupada would say often too, we don't say no sex, but we say, there's sex in marriage. That, if you want to eat nice things, there's so many different foods that one can have. Just like it's different in India, they have, these Mayavadi sannyasis. And so what they actually do is, when they get some food to eat, they have a big, like cup or something. And so they'll just put everything in there. So just like, we'll serve out some prasadam tonight. So they'll put the rice in the thing, they'll put the dal, the sweets, the pakoras, everything. They'll just mix it all up, all the sweets and everything. The drink, just pour that up in there, and then they'll just eat that. Because their point is, they're not trying to enjoy the tongue. Because to eat nice things is illusion. Because, it's on the material platform. But Krishna consciousness isn't like that. To take prasadam is on the spiritual platform. To look at all the nice pictures that these devotees have made of Krishna and of some of the art that has philosophical purport to it. That is spiritual. It's not like we look at this and we say all these different colors. It's just illusion. That's nonsense. So this is a manifestation of the variegatedness of the spiritual world, and the activities are there. We have music. We do kirtan, and there's devotees that they record music and things like that, and we hear that, and so our hearing in that way is satisfied. And then we associate with devotees. We have fun. We joke. We go to different places. We have adventures. Just like some of the devotees, some of them went to India, and some of them went to Florida. So those devotees that went to India, they're seeing so many different pilgrimage sites. It's not like they're going there and thinking, well, there's just an illusion. It's the manifestation of the material energy. They're not thinking like that at all. They're seeing these temples and hearing the history of it, of these great devotees, just like we read some today, and the history of these temples and the activity of the Supreme Lord and his devotees. And then they're taking prasadam there, and they're traveling around, and they're getting purified in that sense. And then also, to the devotees, they went to, Florida. So, where they're going to go get some oranges and hang out with Mickey Mouse. No, they're not doing that at all. They're going there and distributing Srila Prabhupada's books and speaking to people about Krishna. And so they're taking, and this is an austerity actually also, because they're going out there, and it's one of the greatest austerity actually is spreading Krishna consciousness, because there's so much that it's hard to explain unless one has actually done it. But you're going out there face to face with the material energy, and you're speaking to people that everything that you've given up or you maybe were attracted to at some point, they're fully into it. And they may be, like that. And so when that seed in the heart, well, what if I'd done that or done this or whatever? Or maybe one comes in contact with something he's attracted with. But these devotees, they go out and they give people an opportunity for Krishna consciousness. So higher than just, sitting and, doing different austerities and not eating and, making oneself sweat and then, making oneself shiver. Higher than that is going out and giving people the opportunity to come in contact with Krishna consciousness. Because the thing is, that the point of devotional service is to please the spiritual master and to please Krishna. And the greatest way to please Krishna is, as he explains himself in the Bhagavad Gita, is to preach his message, to spread his message. So, and it's not enough, we have to speak his message as he spoke it. Not that we speak 50% what Krishna said and then 50%, what we read, in some, some social studies textbook, 20 years ago. So we have to understand the message and apply that properly. And so that is actually the greatest austerity. So one in that sense, he's greater than a yogi. And so Krishna is explaining all these different intricacies to Arjuna. And so Krishna consciousness is there so much. So you go out and these devotees are traveling together. They're taking nice prasadam. They have their association, and then fun things happen, adventure like that. For a yogi, it's like, what adventure is there? Or someone that's just like speculating that, well, maybe, God is like this or like that, or, and then there's elements and things. And then it's like they live on the mental platform. But on Krishna consciousness, there is no living on the mental platform. You live on the spiritual platform. So you have tons of, it's exciting, it's fun, it's an adventure. Going out and traveling, you may go to a different place and travel around and things like that, and then something crazy happens or whatever, and maybe distributing books, and then the cops, pick you up and then drop you off on another side of town, or, you have to sneak into a place to distribute books or whatever it is. So it's transcendental fun. And then also, too, just like other devotees, they, in different countries, they took great risks to spread Krishna consciousness, just like I was talking about Russia. So these devotees that went into the USSR formerly, they were undercover there, actually. And so to do that and that particular point in time, if you got caught, was like, maybe minimum was like 15 years in prison. In a some Russian camp, maybe 15 years for what? For going and giving people the Bhagavad Gita and speaking the message of the Bhagavad Gita. And so they were doing that, and they were printing books. And actually, one of these in one country, in the USSR, they were printing a book so small that you needed a magnifying glass to read it. That's how undercover they were. And so they were printing these books, and they were taking all these austerities. Why were they doing that? Because they had affinity, had deep love for the spiritual master. And so that love for the spiritual master is manifest in practical service and executing the instructions in the order of the spiritual master. So this is Krishna consciousness, and this is what it actually means to be a yogi. And so Krishna explains in the next verse. So he makes that point that the greatest yogi is the one who is, intimately united with him, or, absorbed in thought of him. Krishna will explain more about, what that means in other chapters of what it means to actually be in Krishna consciousness and what that looks like and qualifications for that. But so we can say that. So it's Krishna consciousness is very easy if we make that endeavor and we try for that. And there's full facility there, and there's nothing. The only thing that's holding us back is ourselves. There's no pressure from the government. There's no food shortages. There's no natural disasters. There's not nuclear fallout. There's nothing holding us back from taking it up fully. The only thing holding us back is ourselves. So we have to realize and come to the platform and understand that this is the most important thing I can be doing, and the thing that's is most worthwhile in my time. And as each day progresses, we should apply ourselves. That's not the word I'm looking for. But as each day progresses, we should increase our commitment more and more to the path of Krishna consciousness and to the spreading of Krishna consciousness, or to assisting in the spreading of Krishna consciousness, of distributing Srila Prabhupada's literatures, and of making people understand the necessity of devotional service, and also understanding it in the proper light, from the as understanding it in the line of the Bhagavad Gita as it is from Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. So anyways, a couple thoughts there, just about a couple points. I don't know if there's any questions or comments about anything. Pretty straightforward stuff, so. All righty. You have something I would do, or? Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned a verse, I think it was earlier in this chapter, or maybe it was one that we spoke on in a previous class, but
Yeah.
something towards the end of the verse says that, for a yogi, their every action should be devoid of sense gratification,
Yeah,
something
the
like
second
that.
verse.
And a lot of verses in the Bhagavad Gita talk like that, mention being devoid of this, and I was curious, I wanted to hear from you. Devoid of sense gratification, does that look the same throughout a devotee's life, or does sense gratification become less as one becomes more advanced? Or sense gratification can be a wide variety of different things.
Yeah, it can be a wide variety.
So how does it is it just sense gratification just means not, or sense gratification means indulging in the four pillars of sinful life, or how does that?
Yeah, it can be a wide thing. So the kind of like the simple term of sense gratification is there's that verse. I don't remember the Sanskrit exactly, but it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Was that I can't remember that exactly, but Krishnadas Kaviraj explains that the desire to satisfy one's own senses is lust. So the basic thing is that sense gratification, the blanket term, is that we're just trying to please ourselves, make our own selves happy, or things in relation to our body happy, without really much care for the shastric injunctions or the soul or things like that or whatever. We may follow some shastric injunctions in order to please our senses. There's some prescription given in that way. So that's kind of like a blanket term. So, but as a devotee's life and, the general journey is that we may be attached to certain things, or whatever. And so, and then we may give them up. Just like, for instance, there's so many different things that I'm attached to still, and was attached to. But like one thing like that I don't do is, I don't watch TV. And so, or whatever, like cartoons or things like that, So that's like, because I understand that, where I'm at right now, that's not conducive for, my Krishna consciousness. And so, like, that was something that I've given up. But then, like, one thing, too, is that we may engage in different activities, but we have a different consciousness. Just like when we first, move into the temple, we may clean the temple, but then, we clean the temple because, and I'm just using this as an example, but we may clean the temple because, we want other devotees to, like, recognize that we clean the temple and we do such a good job. So we're, like, attached to, like, being glorified for activities we do in Krishna consciousness. Then a higher stage that we may come to is that, I'm just doing this for Krishna's pleasure, and I don't really care whether the devotees notice I did it or not. Because you clean the temple, then eventually, every single day, someone's not going to come up to you and like, "Wow, you clean the temple so good." It's like after like a year or two, it's like, all right, you should be cleaning it good. So, like kind of like that. So that, so we may give up things grossly, and then we may give up things on a subtle platform. And then we may be doing things, like we may be thinking, well, I got to go, I just remember like the oil's low in the car or something, or the tires, or like I got to go rotate the tires, or I got to go fix this or fix that. And it seems like, this guy just like cares about like making sure the cars look nice, like what is, like that. But then his whole conscience is that he wants the cars to look nice because they're Krishna's cars. So then it can seem the same at one point actually. But anyways, but the main thing is that sense gratification as in one's own life, one's not trying to please himself, but he's always thinking of how to please Krishna and his devotees and please their senses. Because sense gratification is there, but it's just a matter of being in the right place with the right understanding, not on the gross sensual platform selfishly.
I have another question to add to that, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
The Bhagavatam states that devotional service should be unmotivated and uninterrupted.
Yes.
And it's funny because it seems like if one does service without expecting any sort of reward, you could think it's difficult that doing such a thing is actually rewarding.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear from you, how does the devotee actually receive a higher forms, or higher realm, tapping into a different kind of mercy when you perform service in such a way where you're not expecting, like where is that mercy coming from? Because you can just do things and you're not going to want praise or honor or something like that. So how does that unfold in a devotee's life?
Yeah, so that unfolds that naturally as one advances in Krishna consciousness. Because the thing is that when we engage in the process of devotional service, there's like different weeds and things like that that's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That one may, so we engage in Krishna consciousness, we give up so many things, and we're in devotional service, but then different things might pop up that may deter that growth. And some of those things mentioned are, this labh, puja, pratishtha, this fame, adoration, distinction, being diplomatic. There's a lot of things that are like mentioned there that can deter Krishna consciousness. So the thing is that the devotee he's an expert gardener, and so Krishna consciousness is the most valuablest thing to him. He understands that when one comes to that platform, and so he wants to do everything he can to protect that. And so, beginning the mercy of the spiritual master and hearing regularly, one is able to spot out any, and also too being in the association of devotees, they can help us spot out any weeds or imperfections in our consciousness and point out like, hey, seems like, you're getting a little puffed up. You need to chill out a little bit or whatever, or maybe you should do this or do that. And so they can help us in that way. And so we're engaging in Krishna consciousness and we hear these things and we think about that we actually have to apply them. Because Lord Chaitanya explains, like one verse, Trinada Pisunichena, that, be more humble than a blade of glass, more tolerant than a tree. Amanida Amanidena Kirtaniya Sadahari. And then such a way, lower than glass, more tolerant than a tree. I feel like I'm forgetting something, huh?
Not expect honor.
Yeah, not expect honor. Yeah, give all respect to others, respect none for yourself. And then so in that way, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So we hear this, and then we actually have to apply that in our life. So it's like, it's a gradual thing. And so we understand, and then we can see in ourselves too, like if we do some service, and then nobody recognizes, like, or cares, like, do we feel like sad about that? Whatever. We go, you go to, lead kirtan, but then there's only like 2 people there. Is it like, okay, like I don't want to do kirtan now. It's like I only want to do kirtan if there's like 50 devotees around, or whatever it is, or like, I'm not interested in like, this, that, and the other thing because nobody's around. So we have to be aware of that, and then we work on that, and then we understand where we're at. And we're always striving for that mood. And then also, too, we see the lives of great devotees that are on that level, that they're, engaging in devotional service, and they're unassuming, and they're, they don't have like all these different attachments or whatever, and then they're satisfied in that position. So there may be like some period of dissatisfaction, but the thing is that when you actually obtain the real fruit, and you get an actual like real experience of Krishna consciousness and the taste that comes with that, then then you kind of understand the goal and then what you're working towards, and you get that mercy. Then that kind of like helps you take that next step, because then there's some actual like realization of what the goal is, or what that looks like to actually do service and not expect that. And then one too also understands that that doing this for Krishna, and then he's happy with that, and so one's happy with that naturally, because Krishna's a person. Like what if we're like if we're all living in one big house, together, and then it's like, someone spills, whatever, all the rice and dal on the floor, and then we just think, the owner, like Vishnu's out, and we just, Vishnu's not here right now. He's in India, so if we just make a big mess, and we think, well, anyway, he's not here. Like, we don't have to clean it up. It's like, so it's like it's like a funny idea. So the same way the devotees understand that Krishna is always present. It's not that Krishna's over here. He doesn't see that. He doesn't care. So one who has the proper attitude understands that even though it's like it's a material example, but even though Vishnu's not here, for his pleasure, I'll still do all these different things and do my services accordingly, because that's what he expects of me. So devotee feels the same way about Krishna and serving him in different ways. And it's a big answer, a big topic, but a couple angles at that. So, you're welcome. Anything else from everybody? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just hold it near your mouth.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So today's the verse says that a yogi is better than ascetic.
Yeah.
Right? The one who is renounces everything. This is an ascetic, right? I mean, so if I were to continue what I'm doing now in my material world and continue making lots of money, because I'm doing my karma, right? My yogi. I'm just trying to do what I want to do, or I just doing my duty of living the material life and providing for my family. At the same time, making a lot of money and contributing part of the money to Krishna consciousness. Because this movement also needs a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So would that be better, or me renouncing and becoming ascetic, probably joining a monastery here?
Yeah.
Because the verse clearly says that you being a yogi is better than ascetic.
Yeah. So one thing is that there's a difference between what Krishna's explaining here of like a yogi and ascetic and all these different things. He's talking about like the yoga path, and so in the next verse he makes the point that higher than that is his devotee. So if being in the material world and having a family and things like that, one has responsibilities. And so, the point, with being made here in the Bhagavad Gita is that we have different responsibilities. Arjuna had his responsibilities. So Krishna wasn't encouraging him to renounce, his duty as a fighter and, whatever, and just leave everything, leave his family and leave his sons like that. But he was telling him to do it in the proper consciousness. So it's a big topic. But one stage, higher than that of just, working and just spending one's money only on himself and his family, is contributing it to the spreading of Krishna consciousness, distributing books, or so many different activities. That's definitely a good thing. Higher than that also is beginning to apply the principles of Krishna consciousness in one's life, of chanting Hare Krishna, of reading Bhagavad Gita, of hearing regularly the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita from spiritual authorities in that way. It's definitely a good step in the right direction, but we should understand that the perfection of that is to ultimately come to the platform in which we are following Krishna's instructions completely, 100%. And so it's a step, and that's a step in the right direction to do that. And then that's better than just like giving up everything falsely and stop working and all those things like that, if one's not on that platform. So that's a step in the right direction, but the main direction is that Krishna wants us to surrender to him fully. And
is that mentioned in the next verse?
The next verse he mentions that the highest yogi is one that, it's a devotee more or less, in short. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else want to ask a question?
All right. So thank you all. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.